And a cargo carrier operated by South Korea that suffered a fire after an explosion in the Strait of Hormuz will soon dock at a port in Dubai, paving the path for a comprehensive probe as a Seoul team of investigators departs for the UAE. The government is maintaining its petroleum price cap for the fifth session in a row starting tomorrow, that is Friday, to ease the impact of the unrest in the Middle East on the South Korean economy. Speaking to members of the media at the White House on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump claims Washington and Tehran have had very good talks over the last 24 hours and that prospects of a deal are high. Our Kim Jun-hong has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that talks with Iran are progressing well and that the chance of reaching a deal is high. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump reaffirmed Washington's long-standing position that Tehran should not possess nuclear weapons. He also said that Iran had agreed to abandon nuclear ambitions, a claim that Iran has not yet confirmed.
In the case of Iran, we're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to let that happen, and we won't let that happen.
He added that the United States will see whether Iran can make a deal that is satisfactory to Washington, and said the situation is very much under control. CNN reported on the same day that Washington and Tehran are discussing a possible MOU aimed at ending the war. According to the report, a one-page proposal currently under internal discussion includes a temporary halt to Iran's uranium enrichment program, the unfreezing of Iranian assets, and guarantees for security in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump also told reporters that any deal would require Tehran to transfer its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to the United States and shut down its underground nuclear facilities. Iran said it is still reviewing the U.S. proposal. A foreign ministry spokesperson quoted by Iran's ISNA news agency said Tehran will relay its official position to Pakistani mediators after internal consultations. But the spokesperson dismissed reports that a final agreement is close, calling some of the media coverage speculative. Trump said the deal could be finalized before his planned trip to China next week, but warned that military action could resume if the negotiations fall through. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a cargo carrier operated by South Korea that suffered a fire after an explosion in the Strait of Hormuz will soon dock at a port in Dubai, paving the path for a comprehensive probe. Our Cha Yun-kyung reports.
The HMM Namu, a South Korean-operated bulk carrier that's been stranded in the Strait of Hormuz for more than 2 months, is now being towed toward Dubai. An engine room explosion and fire on Monday left the vessel disabled at sea. The ship's owner, HMM, said it contacted a company in the United Arab Emirates for a tow to Dubai port and could arrive as early as Thursday local time. Around 70 kilometers away, it is expected to take over 8 hours. Once docked, South Korean authorities will begin a full investigation into the cause of the unexplained explosion and fire. A special government team comprising 3 investigators from the Korea Maritime Safety Tribunal and 4 experts from the National Fire Agency headed to Dubai late Wednesday and arrived in early Thursday morning local time. The team is expected to analyze the ship itself and footage from CCTV built inside the vessel and meet face-to-face with the crew. The investigation is also expected to examine claims made by U.S. President Donald Trump that the ship may have acted independently inside the restricted area near the Strait of Hormuz and then was shot at by Iran. However, Iran denied any military involvement in the damage to the Korean ship. HMM also denied those allegations, stating that the ship had been waiting near the control line for restrictions to be lifted but was not within the expanded control zone. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
And here in South Korea, the government is maintaining its petroleum price cap for the 5th session in a row. The latest limit goes into effect tomorrow, that is Friday, and its exact size will be disclosed in about 2 hours' time. Our economics correspondent Kim Do-yeon has more.
Deputy Prime Minister Koo Yoon-chul says Korea's petroleum price cap system is effectively shielding the domestic economy from ongoing geopolitical uncertainties in the Middle East. Government data indicates the price cap and fuel tax cuts successfully lowered consumer price index growth for April by an estimated 1.2 percentage points. This kept domestic inflation at 2.6%, demonstrating significant stability compared to other major economies like the United States and the United Kingdom, which are currently recording inflation rates above 3%. To prevent side effects like sales evasion or hoarding, the government is extending its ban on petroleum product market manipulation by 2 additional months through July. Authorities are stepping up enforcement by introducing new administrative fines and utilizing reward system. Building on these measures, Korea will implement its 5th round of petroleum price caps starting at midnight on May 8th. The exact price ceiling will be officially announced at 7 p.m. on Thursday following a review of international oil price trends and domestic consumption. The government is also expediting customs procedures to secure up to 33 million barrels of Canadian crude oil annually under free trade agreement preferential tariff rates. Authorities are also prioritizing raw materials for essential medical products like syringes and IV fluid packaging. Health insurance reimbursement rates for medical materials will increase by 2% to reflect the recent surge in exchange rates. 김도현, Arirang News.
And South Korea's foreign reserves stood at $427.9 billion as of the end of April. According to the Bank of Korea, the sum is a rise of $4.2 billion on month, driven by a hike in the value of securities that gained $6.4 billion to hit $384.1 billion. Now, these securities account for almost 90% of the total reserves, which strengthen a country's capacity to navigate global market fluctuations. South Korea is the world's 12th largest foreign reserves holder as of the end of March. A parliamentary vote for constitutional amendment was declared invalid in the absence of a quorum on this Thursday afternoon. The ruling Democratic Party asserts the amendment will bolster guardrails against martial law declarations, but the main opposition People Power Party insists the bill is politically motivated ahead of the June local elections. Accordingly, PPP lawmakers boycotted the plenary session for the vote. Nonetheless, the DP plans to put the vote on the floor yet again tomorrow, that is Friday. In the meantime, some 110 non-controversial bills secured bipartisan support today. In other news, intelligence officials here believe North Korea is easing its bellicose rhetoric towards South Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
North Korea appears to have toned down its level of animosity towards South Korea, despite removing references to peaceful reunification in a recent constitutional revision. That's according to Seoul's National Intelligence Service during a closed-door parliamentary meeting on Thursday. Following the reveal of North Korea's constitutional changes the previous day, the NIS briefed lawmakers that Pyongyang has clearly defined the two Koreas as separate states, but significantly scaled down hostile rhetoric towards the South. According to the revised text disclosed by Seoul's Unification Ministry, North Korea deleted references to peaceful reunification, great national unity, and the complete victory of socialism. It also added a territorial clause defining North Korea as bordering China and Russia to the north and South Korea to the south. But the constitution does not specify maritime boundary lines, such as the disputed Northern Limit Line. The revisions reflect Kim's two-states doctrine introduced 3 years ago, recasting inter-Korean ties as relations between two separate states rather than one nation awaiting reunification. However, intelligence sources say that such revisions are aimed more at managing the situation and maintaining the status quo rather than escalating hostility with the South. The NIS noted that the revisions have elevated Kim Jong-un's status by scaling back references to the legacies of former leaders Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, while emphasizing the current leader's governing principle. Kim's power in the regime has been expanded significantly. His position in the State Affairs Commission is newly defined as the head of state and placed above parliament in the constitutional order. Kim can appoint or dismiss key officials and veto laws and state decisions. At the same time, Parliament's formal power to remove the State Affairs Commission chairman was deleted. Most significantly, the revised constitution hands Kim command authority over North Korea's nuclear forces.
Kim Jong-un also emphasized his total control of the North Korean nuclear capability, and as the state chairman of the state affairs, and he is the only one that controls the North Korean nuclear capability. At the same time, if he has been threatened or he's out of the scene, and there is automatically that the nuclear war is going to be happened. So this is another very serious warning to South Korea, United States, and the world.
The Blue House said Thursday it is reviewing North Korea's newly revised constitution and continues to pursue a policy of peaceful coexistence on the Korean peninsula. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also, on the security front, South Korea's very own fighter jet is ready for deployment after about a decade in development. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has details.
After undergoing rigorous verification tests, South Korea's first domestically developed fighter jet, the KF-21, is officially ready for combat. According to the Defense Acquisition Program Administration on Thursday, the KF-21 has received final operational combat certification. This means the fighter, known locally as the Porame, has met the Korean Air Force's required operational capabilities, and that the Block 1 air-to-air combat variant of the aircraft has been confirmed reliable to operate in real-world conflicts. This comes 3 years after the aircraft received a provisional operational combat assessment in May 2023. The development of the KF-21 began in December 2015, with the first official testing starting in May 2021. Over the following 5 years, through February 2026, the aircraft underwent extensive ground testing to verify durability and structural integrity, completing more than 1,600 flight tests, covering roughly around 13,000 test conditions, including area refueling and weapons launch tests. The KF-21's development program is slated to be completed in June, and the first mass-produced aircraft is to be delivered to the Air Force as early as late September. The state-run agency is planning to further secure air-to-ground combat capabilities through additional weapons testing. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
As for the latest on the legal front with regard to South Korea's short-lived martial law under the former Yoon administration, the prison term for former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has been shortened to 15 years by the Seoul High Court. Our Yoon-jin has more.
An appeals court in South Korea on Thursday reduced the prison sentence for former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to 15 years from 23 given by a lower court in January in relation to former President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law on the night of December 3, 2024. The reduction by 8 years was due to the court ruling that records didn't show clear evidence of Han's active participation in the insurrection, as well as taking into consideration Han's over 50 years of public service. However, the appeals court upheld the lower court's finding that Han was guilty of engaging in key acts to help Yoon declare martial law and failed to dissuade him. During the ruling, the judge also specified that Han was aware of plans to cut off power and water supplies to some media companies during the martial law, yet again failed to prevent it. Judge Lee Seung-chul of the Seoul High Court also highlighted that Han abandoned the grave responsibilities that come from authority and position that had been entrusted to him, including intervening in the president's wrongful exercise of authority. The judge added that afterwards, Han continued to commit crimes to cover up his guilt. Meanwhile, Han stands by his denial of wrongdoing on all charges except perjury. His lawyer said he would appeal again. Ieun-jin, Arirang News.
On the technology front, a South Korean startup and the country's brain pool are stepping up to respond to demands for innovative ways to uncork interconnection bottleneck. Our business correspondent Park Jun-an tells us what this means.
NVIDIA's venture capital arm Nventures has made its first investment in a Korean startup, participating in a $76 million Series B funding round. The company develops plastic tube technology to replace conventional copper wires and optical cables inside AI data centers. This aims to resolve critical data bottlenecks, addressing the industry's growing need for faster and more efficient methods to transfer massive amounts of data.
It offers 10x more reach of copper interconnect and 3x lower power consumption, 3x lower cost, and then it gives 1,000 times better latency compared to optical interconnects.
Having already worked with NVIDIA for over 2 years, the CEO added that his company will work hard to dominate the global interconnections market, not only in data centers, but also in the automotive and consumer electronics sectors. The startup's core technology was born here at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, or KAIST. Students here don't just study science. Here at KAIST, the message is clear. It is time for Korea's brightest minds to showcase their technological capabilities in the global stage. By developing new technologies and collaborating with global AI players, Korea is proving its role as a potential AI leader. Professor Bae Hyun-min, a co-founder of Point2 Technology and director of the Institute for Startups at KAIST, has been teaching students there since 2009. He said his experience of starting a business while studying in the U.S. taught him many aspects of the startup process, and that he wanted his students to learn from his experiences and eventually start their own businesses as well.
Because KAIST has strong research infrastructure and manpower to plan and develop new ideas, it was relatively easier to secure research funding. That allowed us to spend several years building prototypes. And once we started seeing meaningful results, we were able to attract investors and commercialize the technology.
With a commitment to fostering a robust startup environment, Professor Bae said he will do his utmost to help the next generation of engineers translate their research into global success stories. 박준환, Arirang News, Daejeon.
Meanwhile, on the K-pop front, BTS received a warm welcome from Mexican President Sheinbaum on Wednesday ahead of its concerts in Mexico City this week. The group also joined her on the balcony of the National Palace, waving to crowds that included tens of thousands of BTS fans as well as local residents. Now, BTS kicks off its first concert in Mexico City under its Arirang World Tour later on this Thursday, with 2 more shows on the schedule for Saturday and Sunday.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The cruise ship at the center of a deadly Hantavirus outbreak left Cape Verde on Wednesday and is now heading to Spain's Canary Islands. It is expected to arrive in Tenerife in 3 days. 3 more patients have been evacuated from the ship, 2 of them in serious condition. The MV Hondias is carrying nearly 150 people, none of whom are currently showing symptoms of the disease. Spain's health minister said once the ship docks, non-Spanish passengers will be repatriated to their home countries, while the 14 Spanish nationals on board will be quarantined at a military hospital in Madrid. 8 cases in total have been recorded and 5 confirmed by laboratory testing. 3 people have died. The WHO's top epidemic experts said the risk to the wider public remains low and stressed that this is not the next COVID. Israel struck a target in Beirut on Wednesday for the first time since agreeing to a ceasefire with Hezbollah last month. Israel said it was targeting a commander of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force in the city's southern suburbs. Israeli media reported the commander was killed, though neither the IDF nor Hezbollah immediately confirmed it. Lebanon's health ministry said separate Israeli strikes in the south of the country killed 4 more people. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israeli strikes critically wounded the son of Hamas's top negotiator and killed at least 5 others. In the U.S., Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told congressional investigators he cannot explain why he and his family had lunch on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's private island in 2012. His answers on Wednesday contradict his past public statements about cutting ties with Epstein years earlier. Lutnick had previously claimed he distanced himself from Epstein around 2005 after an uncomfortable encounter. Justice Department files released in January showed the 2012 island visit and emails showing Lutnick later invited Epstein to a 2015 fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Ted Turner, the media mogul who launched CNN, died on Wednesday at the age of 87. He had been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in 2018. Turner pioneered 24-hour TV news with CNN and built a media empire before selling Turner Broadcasting to Time Warner for $7.3 billion in 1996. In his later years, he devoted his fortune to philanthropy, donating $1 billion to United Nations charities and conservation groups. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
From this afternoon into tonight, rain is expected across the Seoul metropolitan area, inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-do, and western Jeollado provinces. But there won't be too much rainfall, with most areas seeing around 5 millimeters or less. Meanwhile, UV levels will be very high tomorrow between noon and 3 p.m. So if you're heading outside, don't forget your sunscreen. Tomorrow, daytime temperatures across central regions will dip slightly. Temperatures will begin to rise again over the weekend, with Saturday's high expected to reach 23 degrees Celsius. As for temperatures, Seoul will start the day at 10 degrees, Chuncheon at 9 degrees, Daegu at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 20 degrees, Daejeon at 21 degrees, Busan at 23 degrees. Tomorrow on Parents' Day, light rain is expected in parts of Gangwon-do province. And as we head into the weekend, skies will clear nationwide, bringing mostly sunny and pleasant conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
An in-depth studio discussion on AI, bio, climate, defense, and economy, the 5 key industries driven by Korea. We also examine how the 5 future strategic industries are bringing innovations to workplaces and everyday life. Focus on K Initiative at the heart of change. A journey to find real beauty items, beauty on and off. Exploring how beauty is perceived across cultures and generations, and highlighting K-beauty culture from multiple angles. Idol group On and Off try the products themselves and come up with their own guidelines. The most honest beauty report you can trust. Beauty On and Off. Michelin star chef Fabrizio teams up with a traditional liquor sommelier to offer the most exquisite balance of tastes. Explore more than just recipes, but the rich layers of flavors, as well as the beautiful backdrops of breweries across the nation. Experience the Korean sentiments and the art of balance laid out on a table. Music for the ears as well as the eyes. Come closer to the riveting charm of K-pop. Experience the height of performance, style, and detail. An interactive music show calling out to K-pop fans around the world. Tune in to Simply K-pop, the trendiest choice for global fans.
A commercial ship operated by South Korea suffered an explosion and fire in the Strait of Hormuz this past Monday. But news of this incident did little to dampen investor sentiment on the local bourse, which topped the 7,000 mark for the first time on Wednesday. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Thursday, May 7th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Earlier this week, news of an explosion and a fire on a cargo carrier operated by South Korea in the Strait of Hormuz made headlines here and elsewhere, but investors on the local bourse and exporters here in the country appeared unfazed. For more on this, I have Celio Ferretti with French daily Le Croix here in the studio. Celio, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have Lee Ji-hoon with global news agency Reuters in the studio with us. Ji-hoon, it's great to have you back.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Right, Celio, we shall start with you. Let's begin with details about the explosion and the fire this past Monday on a ship operated by South Korea in the Strait of Hormuz.
So what we know so far about this incident, and it's still a developing story and somewhat ambiguous one. On Monday evening, Korea time, an explosion followed by a fire broke out on a cargo ship, the HMM Namu, while it was anchored in the Strait of Hormuz near the United Emirates waters. And the ship was carrying 24 crew members, including 6 South Korean. And importantly, in that story, no casualties were reported. In terms of what actually happened that day, the initial reports point to an incident in or near the engine room. Crew members heard an explosion and saw later a splash of water along the side of the vessel. The fire was later brought under control, and the ship is now being was towed to Dubai for an inspection, and an investigation is going on that is led by the Korean government. So now on the cause, this is where things get more complicated. At this stage, nothing is confirmed. Right after the incident, Donald Trump mentioned that it was an attack by the Iranian forces. So there's speculation that it might be a drone or a missile fired by the Iranian army, some kind of projectile. We don't know if it was aimed at the Korean ship especially, or just maybe a missed a stray bullet, we would say. But several elements cast some sort of doubt on that scenario. South Korean authorities have been very cautious to blame anyone in that case, and they say it's still unclear if it was really an attack by the Iranian forces. Military official also pointed out that if it was indeed a missile or a drone attack or a mine even, you would typically expect bigger damage and more casualties if it really was, much more severe impact on the ship. So we're not sure. Wee Sung-lak even mentioned that it could be just an incident in the room, like a machine exploding that was badly maintained or badly repaired. There's also like a whole political dimension behind it, because Donald Trump was really pushing hard this narrative on Iranian attack to maybe drag Korea into more participation to this Project Freedom that he had envisioned in the beginning of the week. So it seemed that this incident was returned by Donald Trump to as a tool, as a leverage to impose his narrative and drag people into the war. We'll see what the investigation led by Korean authorities will deliver, maybe some answers later.
Right, a team of investigators and experts from South Korea, of course, in the UAE to find the cause of the explosion and fire, which have yet to be confirmed. Chun, in response to this incident, as Celia mentioned, Mr. Trump called on South Korea to join his Project Freedom mission. But the following day, he halted his Project Freedom mission in the Strait of Hormuz. What's the latest on that front?
Yeah, it was yesterday Korea time or Tuesday Washington time. President Trump said his so-called Project Freedom to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz would be paused. He said there was great progress in negotiations with Iran to end the war, and Project Freedom will be paused for what he said a short period of time to see if there will be an agreement. Still, it was uncertain what kind of progress was made between Iran and the United States, and how long, for how long the project will be paused. After face-to-face negotiations between Iran and the United States, Iran said that it was reviewing a proposal from the United States for peace talks, though it was unclear what kind of agreement there would be. When it comes to South Korea, especially after the fire on the ship, it said it was reviewing if it should join the project led by Trump. But after Trump paused the project yesterday, South Korea said it was no longer necessary to consider participating in the project. South Korea, since the war broke out, it has always been cautious about being directly involved in the Middle East conflict. Its stance has been that the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz should be protected under international law because its oil supplies have been disrupted by the Middle East conflict. And even more, presidential officials said, as Celia mentioned, it was unclear what the cause of the incident was. So that is another case showing that South Korea is very cautious about being involved in this conflict and Trump's Project of Freedom.
Right, so we've touched upon South Korea's stance with regard to Project Freedom. Celio, what has been the response from Europe, I wonder, to Project Freedom?
Europe's reaction to Project Freedom has been, above all, cautious, skeptical, and somewhat uneasy, largely because the initiative, ambiguity and volatility surrounding Donald Trump's broader strategy in the Middle East. First, there's a clear sense in Europe that this is more of a political rebranding more than like a substantive political shift in this strategy. The plan essentially repackage an existing maritime operation in the Strait of Hormuz without offering the kind of a robust military protection like a naval escort that would really materially change the security situation in the Strait. From a European perspective, this raised doubt of its operational effectiveness. It looks like this Project Freedom has been like kind of improvised over the weekend to come up with something new, and seeing how it got scrapped in just one day showed that there was really nothing behind it. And second, and more importantly, there's concern about the risk of escalation. By elevating the initiative to a presidential flagship policy, Trump has effectively increased the stakes, and European analysts worry that it would, this framing, having like such a personal stance on the matter, could provoke strong reaction from Iran and turn the fragile status quo and discussion ongoing into more confrontation. In other words, if it's presented as a humanitarian or stabilizing move, could actually become a trigger for further destabilization of the region. And there's also a broader issue of strategic inconsistency. Trump rapid shift from aggressive rhetoric to more dialogue, to all those kind of smaller scale operation really blurred all the lines for the allies, and they don't really know what the U.S. real intentions are for the Middle East. At first, the war was supposed to last only a week or two, then a few weeks, and now it's been dragging on for more than 2 months. So Europeans lack confidence in long-term planning from Washington. And finally, Europe still is holding on a diplomatic resolution to the conflict. Dialogue is most important for Europe, and they want to find a more pacifist way to end the conflict, and that's not really working well with the U.S. The discussions are also a bit opaque. We don't really know what's going on with that deal that always Trump is talking about. So for now, Europe wants to distance itself from the conflict, maybe try to interact directly with Iran to find a solution with other partners in the region to find a situation that would make a good compromise and maybe move forward with a solution to propose to the U.S.
Right. In the meantime, Jihoon, let's move now on to the economic ripple effects of the unrest in the Middle East. Investors on the local bourse, as I mentioned earlier, as well as, of course, exporters here in South Korea, they appear to be little affected by the tensions in the Middle East. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, despite this Middle East noises, South Korea's benchmark Kospi index yesterday rose above 7,000 points for the first time in history, thanks to a rally in chipmaker stocks led by AI optimism. Kospi rose more than 6% to close above 7,300. I believe it was around above 7,400 today. Thanks to strong foreign buying of chipmaker stocks, which was the biggest daily purchase on record. Yesterday, both chipmakers Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix rose more than 10%, which brought Samsung Electronics market capitalization to above $1 trillion for the first time ever. That made Samsung Electronics become the second Asian company to joined the $1 trillion club after Taiwan's TSMC. And there are now only 4 companies in Asia that are valued more than $500 billion, which are TSMC, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Tencent. Last month, Samsung announced that its quarterly profit for the first quarter was higher than its entire profit for last year, and SK Hynix also said its profit for the first quarter was posted a 5-fold jump from a year earlier. And according to monthly trade data that came out last week, it seems the trend is continuing in the second quarter as well. In April, South Korea's exports rose 48%, which was higher than market expectation for 45%. And that was thanks to a more than 170% jump in semiconductor exports. And amid this chip boom, the Kospi has been the world's best performer last year and this year. It has already risen more than 75% so far this year, after rising 76% last year, which was the biggest since 1999. And Samsung and SK Hynix now account for 44% of the Kospi's market value, and which is above 6,000 trillion won as of yesterday. And one analyst said if this AI trend continues, the Kospi could rise above 10,000 points by the end of this year, which suggests investor optimism is still high about AI, but of course there are risks from weaker growth and higher inflation due to the Middle East conflict.
Right. And Celia, it's not even just the stock market here that appears resilient to the unrest in the Middle East. It's also the case for markets elsewhere in the world. How are analysts explaining this phenomenon?
Yeah, it looks counterintuitive at first glance, but analysts says there are quite a few reasons why it's acting like this, why market from like S&P 500 or Asian one like Kospi are holding on so well despite the geopolitical unrest. The first and most important factor is, as we said, the AI-driven boom. Equity indices today are heavily concentrated into some specific firms, and most importantly, semiconductors and AI high technology company. In the US, giants like Alphabet or Amazon are pouring massive investment into AI. In Asia, it's company, as we say, like Samsung, TSMC, SK Hynix. And the key point is that demand for AI infrastructure, chips, data centers, memory remain extremely strong and disconnected from the oil shock that we're all seeing. That's pushing up earnings. In fact, U.S. companies reported profit growth far above expectation, especially in tech. So markets are being lifted by this very strong strong fundamentals, but in a really narrow dominant sector. And second, there's the market mechanic also effect. When the Iran conflict began, we remember the market suddenly dropped almost by double digit in some areas. But what triggered that effect triggered what economists call a short squeeze, which is hedge fund betted on a drop. And since the value dropped, they bought back in, which helped increase and really stop the bleeding of the market, let's say that way. And so that really accelerated the rally over the stock market. And third factor also, there's a sort of investor optimism. Some would even say like a sort of complacency. But many investors are betting that this war in Iran, this geopolitical unrest, will not last long because they believe the trade route passing through the Strait of Hormuz is so important for the world trade that it cannot remain blocked indefinitely. So they believe in some coming months it will be over, and so they're still quite optimistic about the stock market. And there's still also more broadly a confidence in central bank and how they reacted to the crisis and a good management, they believe. So when you put all of these factors together, this paradoxical at first glance situation comes actually quite logical for the investors, for the markets, and that's why we're seeing all those stock markets all across the world holding on so well despite the geopolitical unrest.
Right. Chiun, meanwhile, back here in South Korea, analysts, they're also noting a rise in consumer prices in recent times. How much have these prices risen?
Yeah, last month, South Korea's consumer prices rose 2.6%, which was faster than 2.2% in March, and the fastest since July 2024, so nearly 2 years. It was led by a surge in petroleum prices, which rose 8% over the month due to high crude oil prices, and as well as international airfares, which rose 14%. Analysts are saying inflation is still being somewhat limited thanks to the government's policy measures such as nationwide fuel price caps introduced from March. But inflation will keep rising going forward because of spillover effects from high oil prices, such as we've seen in the case of airfares. The Bank of Korea also said inflation will be even higher in May because inflation pressure is still high despite government policy measures. And the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Korea, Ryu Sang-dae, said this week because of high inflation pressure, the central bank will have to start considering interest rate hikes. And as analysts said, his comments were a shift in the Bank of Korea's monetary policy because at the last meeting, the Bank of Korea said it was taking a wait-and-see stance due to uncertainty over risks to both growth and inflation. But now his remarks are suggesting that the Bank of Korea is focusing more on inflation. They said, analysts said the Bank of Korea is likely to signal a policy change at their next meeting later this month, before starting to raise interest rates from the following meeting in July. Analysts are also expecting this policy shift to be a rate hike cycle of multiple increases rather than just one-time hike. And the bond market is also pricing in rate hike expectation these days, with the three-year Treasury bond yield, which is sensitive to policy interest rates, are at highest since November 2023. The Bank of Korea has been holding its policy interest rate for about a year, since May 2025. So if it delivers interest rate increases from July, there will be the first hike since early 2023, when the central bank raised interest rates from 0.5 to 3.5 in 1.5 years due to the Ukraine war.
Right, and that being the situation, of course, here in South Korea. With regard to the broader global economy, Celia, Bloomberg, and I quote, says economic cross-currents are mounting as energy shock meets AI wave. Could you tell us a bit about this coverage?
I think what Bloomberg is getting at with that phrase, economic cross-current, is that the global economy is currently being pulled in two opposite directions at the same time. And that tension is becoming a feature of the outlook for the future. On one side, you have what we call the AI-driven boom, so demand for artificial intelligence infrastructure, semiconductors, data centers, and that's lifting export industrial output and investment in countries deeply plugged into this supply chain, so countries like South Korea or Taiwan. And in some cases, growth is really spectacular, as we're seeing here. Exports are jumping, chip shipments are also soaring, and this is feeding into the broader GDP of these countries. And it's a very classic positive shock for supply and demand shock for these countries. But at the same time, you have this energy shock, energy oil crisis linked to the Iran war, which is pushing oil prices higher and acting as a drag on growth. It is particularly painful for countries, again, like South Korea or Taiwan or even India, which are deeply dependent on energy imports. And this inflation of the prices it's putting a lot of weight on consumer prices, on companies, on purchasing power overall in the economy. So that really squeezes that purchasing power and raises production costs also. For some companies, they're not winning. And that cross-current idea is really that a sort of split reality in the economy. First, you're seeing growing divergence between winners and losers. Commodity exporters, countries that export, that sells energy to others, they're benefiting from this oil shock, while importers are under strain. And the same split applies to financial market also and currencies. And second, it's making life also more difficult for central bank, as we mentioned. They're stuck between weaker growth and higher inflation, and that's why many are posing or even reconsidering rates hike rather than easing them. And finally, it creates more of a fragile outlook. Even though the AI boom is enough to support growth, it becomes this, what we call here sometimes the K-shaped growth, which is some are winning in some very specific sectors, but the rest is struggling more. And so for now, it's okay because the AI boom is still going strong and help to relieve a bit of the economy. But in the future, the bottom line is that we don't know how long it's gonna hold up to this. And so with this very strongly divided economic reality, experts are being worried that in the coming months, if the oil shock starts to continue for too long, maybe it will outpace the AI boom. Current government or just the overall general government, especially in Asia, need to think of a strategy for long term in case those shocks, this oil shock especially, is going and will be lasting long.
Right. Against that backdrop, Ji-hoon, I'd like to quickly touch upon talks between Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwon and U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. What's been disclosed about their discussions on investment?
Yep, Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwon is traveling to the United States this week to meet his counterpart, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, to discuss U.S. investment plans. Since the two countries reached a trade deal last November, there has been little known about specifics of which investment project South Korea would take part in. But earlier this year, when we interviewed our Finance Minister Ko Yoon-chul, he mentioned nuclear power plant as an example. So it is possible the first project could be in the energy sector. And on context, South Korea has been speeding up its implementation of the trade deal since early January when President Trump threatened to raise tariffs against South Korea. So since then, there has been legislation enacted to approve the investment project, and a special institution is being set up to implement the trade deal. According to local media reports today, after this meeting between Lutnick and Kim, it is likely the first project will be announced after June because that is when the government expects the special institution to be prepared and the administrative process to be completed. Having said that, the security part is still also uncertain between South Korea and the United States, with the agreement on building nuclear submarines not going forward since the agreement last November, reportedly due to the issue of e-commerce from Kupang. So there is a lot of uncertainty diplomacy-wise between South Korea and the United States, with various issues hanging, such as the trade deal, security agreement, Kupang, and of course the involvement in the Middle East situation.
You're right, which is why the list of items to talk about between these two officials will be quite long then. All right, Ji-hoon, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you very much.
Celia, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank
you. Right, that ends Thursday's edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.
curious about Korea?
And especially K-food? How familiar are you with